an unwelcome audience. I've always had a weird group of friends. They all went into manly careers like logging, oil rig work, construction, and I'm the black sheep of our little group of high school buddies. I went into IT. They gave me shit all the time about working on nerd stuff, and I gave them shit back. Me no likey computer, me dig horse. I'm an unlikely addition to the group of friends, but it works somehow. So there we are, in a bar. This is one of those rare occasions where everyone's back in town together and we're getting drunk, swapping stories about horrors on the job. Someone talks about when part of the oil rig blew up, killing 3 people a few years ago. Danny, an actual lumberjack, told us a story about seeing a guy not 10 feet in front of him get his arm torn clean off by a log line. Just a quick zip, and the limb went flying. He held a shirt to the wound as the man bled out, babbling and in agony, until a lifeline came 2 hours too late. All the while, I'm just sitting there, knowing I got a story. But it's not the kind of story I'd usually bring up to a bunch of drunk friends. Not the kind of story I'd tell anybody, actually. It's the kind of truly unsettling memory that you worry. Should you tell it? You might give it life. You might feed it somehow. Make it more real. I carry it around in the back of my mind like a caged, dangerous animal, not considering letting it out. Until now. Everyone's said something already, and I'm just sitting there, looking sheltered, looking obvious. So I ignore that voice in my head. Don't. I ignore my dry, tightening throat. Don't. I've got one. My voice cracks a little, and they look surprised. I'm surprised. They all give me a doubtful, amused look. Go on then, the looks say. And so I do. I work from home on our 30 acres outside of a small town in Alaska. I live alone. No kids. It's a college town. Just a small liberal arts college of a few hundred, but it's the heart of the town. The campus is huge, with the natural beauty of the area being a big draw. Reservation land neighbors the campus, and the tribe sort of acts like park rangers for the hundreds of miles of forest trails. My own land borders part of the campus on the other side. One day I'm out on the edge, part of my property, right behind my house. It's probably about 200 yards away. I'm watering a set of raised beds I have right near the tree line, just enjoying the sunny day. That's when something weird happens. Then there's a sound, like a record of something speaking, coming from a few hundred feet in the woods. It's like someone talking to you through a bad cell connection, where only parts of the words are coming through, and it's just noise. But you can tell it's supposed to be words. I just stood there listening to the noise, curious but not afraid. I didn't even turn the hose off. I think looking back, that's why it took me so long to get freaked out, to start taking it seriously. Weird things like that, supernatural things, happen at night, deep in the woods, not at 1 o'clock in the afternoon while standing right in your backyard. After about 30 seconds, it just stops. I turn the water off, then try to figure out if it actually stopped or it just got quieter. Nothing. I file it away as a minor oddity, something to be brought up later as a casual conversation token, or more likely, forgotten. That was my first regret. Fast forward a couple weeks, I'm on a hike at the back of my property on one of the trails I started last summer, which is pretty overgrown at this point, sadly. I'm walking a little bit, getting some exercise in. I'm strolling, lost in the tree covers, simply enjoying the gorgeous midsummer weather. I pulled from my thoughts when I hear the odd sound in the woods. Far in the distance, there's a sound of garbled human speech. The forest around me, though, is oddly quiet. Now I'm not much of a risk taker, and I generally prefer looking irrational to looking dead. I casually turn and walk back towards the trail entrance, not wanting to encourage any large predators by fleeing suddenly. What the hell is making that sound anyways? I decide to bring Danny along to check it out when he comes to visit in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, I'm back at the trailhead, alone, because Danny bailed on me. I told him that if I died, I'd be coming straight to his apartment to haunt the shit out of him. Looking down the seemingly unconscious forest trail, I steel myself. I check my pack, bear spray, and brand new Bowie knife, which I had no idea how to use. It's just a sound, I said to myself. I start down the path. A few miles, in about an hour, I hear the first signs of that odd sound in the distance. It's maybe 100 yards ahead, and just off the side of the trail. The forest, however, moves and rustles with life in that familiar, reassuring way. I carry on. As I approach the origin of the sound, I put my hand to the hilt of my Bowie knife, the source of the sound now within 20 feet or so. It's the same stream of incoherent babble, but with a distant crackling sound to it. Looking up, I see a small black speaker fixed to the tree about 10 feet from the ground. Huh? Fairly confident the speaker poses no threat, I take my hand from my knife and inspect it. Written on the side of the speaker in white paint is the name of the local college and the words, Forestry Adept. Ah, a clue and a reasonable explanation. Go figure, you jumpy prick. Content that I won't have to stab anything or haunt any apartments this day, I head back home. During a slow day the next week, I call the forestry department of the college. Yes, I'd like to speak to the dean. No, I'm not a student. No, they don't know I'm calling. The dean answered in a bored voice, but seemed eager to answer my questions as if it were the highlight of an otherwise boring day. As it turns out, the speaker is, or was, a sort of live art project in which students could write and record poems to be spoken aloud in the forest. It's solar-powered, but he suspected the connection of the speaker I found had gone bad. Once per semester, someone was supposed to come out and upload new MP3s to a waterproof MP3 player near the base of each tree. He went on to say that they discontinued the project due to outcry from the nearby tribe. Intentionally, he ignored their request to take down the speakers, but the vice president of the college eventually stepped in when complaints persisted, worried about souring the good relations with the tribe. They probably missed my station when they went to take them all down, he said. We continued talking a little bit as I asked some more questions. By that point, I thought to myself, mystery solved. Hiking season passes without incident. After a month after the snows finally melt, I decide to go on another hike on the trail with the speaker. I've got some overnight camping gear with me, and I plan to camp out near my turnaround point a few hours away. I almost miss the speaker when I'm about an hour in. It's completely silent now. I stop to poke at the electronics a bit, but there's nothing obviously wrong with it. The connections appear to have finally worn out over the winter. I continue down the trail. About 2 hours later, I set up my tent and prepared a simple camp. It's late afternoon, but I'm feeling kind of restless, and with a few hours of daylight left, I decided to walk ahead of my turnaround point for a little bit. I pick a little offshoot trail that leads upward, perhaps with the promise of a nice view. Just a few minutes into my walk, my mind is drifting. I'm just soaking up the late afternoon sun and basking in the first good weather of the season. I picked the perfect time to explore. Damn, this is nice, I think to myself. And a moment later, I hear that familiar, unsettling sound of speaking in the distance. I pause on the trail, my brain still registering the noise. The sound is a little different, and even so, not far away. I can tell that it's of higher quality than the first speaker. I get closer and have to go a little off trail to make out the woods. It's definitely missing the crackling sound, so I can easily make out the words. It's the sound of a woman reading poems, just as the dean said. Less strange than I once saw it, I decided to stick on a rock near the speaker, pull out my water, and take a little break. I'm sitting there listening to the sounds of the forest and the voice reading the familiar poems. It still feels a little eerie, though after just a few minutes I decided to get going. I toss my water bottle in my pack and stand to leave. That's when I hear the other voice. Someone nearby is babbling this crazy nonsense words. I perk up, curious but not yet afraid. It has this strange warbling sound, like the natural rise and fall of pitch in a sentence, but in all the wrong places. Like someone turning random words into a sentence, then into questions. It's the kind of sound you'd laugh at if you weren't alone in a forest miles and miles from help. As I'm listening, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, the forest goes dead silent around me. As if flipping a switch, the sound begins trailing close through some thick brush in front of me. I'm totally frozen in place, just listening to the ridiculous noise, like a giant basso baby voice. I utter under my breath, "What the fuck?" I see just a glimpse of something coming through the brush, and my trance is broken. My conscious mind is slammed to the back seat as an animal instinct sends me sprinting back toward the trail. I'm running. I realize what I was running from, and then it hits me. A wall of realization, a great towering cloud of cold, crippling realization. I actually stumble. I feel like I'm going in slow motion. It's forming in my mind like a slowly censored water droplet, just before the release, and then the fall. My chest tightens, and I take a sudden sharp breath. It has a hand, some sort of grotesque hand reaching through the brush, a body to match the distorted voice. It's then I hear it again, on the path right behind me. "What the fuck?" It warbles, like it's learned a phrase for the first time and it's trying it out, only it has this odd pleading quality to it. Fuck, I'm running. Fuck, fuck, fuck. I'm barely touching the ground, feet flying down the tight forest trail in the late afternoon sun. Tree branches are slapping at me as I barrel down the path, careless, mindless. My nerves are on my knife's edge for the entire sprint back to camp, ears pricked in, skin covered in goosebumps. I enter a clearing and slow to walk into camp, my hand hovering lightly over my Bowie knife. I see my tent in the small clearing where the main trail splits into a smaller trail. The tent sits in the shade, flat and open. I stop staring at it. It would take about 10 minutes to pack that up. I thought about it for a second. Nope. I'm moving again, back on the main trail now. I'm holding a great jog, but after about 30 seconds later, I slide to a stop because I hear something new. I hear nothing. A quiet deeper than anything before. No distant birds, no rustling leaves, no quiet breeze of insects. There is only complete and unnatural silence, almost suffocating. It's like having a giant glass jar dropped around me. One second, there was a rich blanket of forest sounds, then the next, thump, I'm in a vacuum. I freeze. I can feel my heart pounding out of my chest, but otherwise I'm as silent and still as the forest around me. The air is hot, still, and dead on my sweaty skin, like standing in a silent summer attic. An odd thought occurs to me, an intuition that I shouldn't move. People always get that feeling like they're being watched, but it isn't quite like that. It's not like being watched. It's like I'm being examined, and my gut is telling me to blend in, to do what the bugs and the birds and the trees are doing. Sit the fuck still and wait. Do as they do, I think to myself. This isn't something you run from. Do as they do and survive. So I wait, frozen in an awkward position mid-stride, mid-breath. refusing to even blink or look around. I stand there, like a store mannequin in the closet, watching through wooden slats as something very bad looks back through the slats at me, trying to figure out if I'm actually a mannequin or just something pretending. We look at each other like that, the force and I, for 10 seconds. My head is swimming with terror. 20 seconds. My lungs are screaming for air and my heart is pounding. It still examines me. And suddenly the gaze is broken. It focuses on something else. My vision narrows to a pinpoint because my brain is clamoring for oxygen. Far off, I hear the rustle of leaves. So slowly, it comes my way. Not the rustle of a creature, but a great exhale from the forest. The sound of the forest returns in a great sweep past me. I bend, put my hands on my knees, and join in with a heavy gasp of my own. The rest of the trip back is barely restrained from panic. I jump at every twig snapping, but I'm in a forced calm because the logical part of me knows I can't run forever. I set my pace at a brisk hike for 2 hours into the early evening. It's getting dark by that time, and I get back to my property finally. In the bar, my friends are still statues still, faces slack. No one has touched their drink in 5 minutes. My whole body is shaking. I run the fingers of both hands through my hair. It was like I was staring down the barrel of a gun I couldn't see, but I knew that if I had so much twitched, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have known I was there. It would have known I was real. And I never went back for that tent, I said, taking a sip of beer and taking a little grim satisfaction in my friends' stunned, distant faces. They let out a few half-hearted, nervous chuckles at my attempt to lighten the mood, but otherwise, everyone seems instantly interested in their drinks, the table, or the floor. "Shit, man," one of them says eventually. "Yeah," I reply. "Yeah." We're all pretty quiet and unusually passive, until we pay our tabs and leave the bar. On the way out, one of my buddies pulls me aside and asks, "Was that really true? All of it, I mean?" I just sort of squint and look up at the Alaskan sky. Eventually the words I'm looking for come to me. There's shit out there no one can explain. Things that don't have names, and I think every now and then we will come across one. The smart people, or I mean the lucky people like me, are the ones who get to tell their stories. He looks at me for a moment longer, then, seemingly content with my answer, he nods and walks to his car. "Night," he says. "Night," I say. Of course I don't tell him there's more. I don't tell him if it wasn't the invisible force staring me down in the woods. It was a monster, a lanky, horrid, yet somehow human thing. It was the shape of a man, but it was no man. God gave me 2 gifts that day. The first was sparing my life, and the other was keeping the creature in my vision. I did tireless research after the incident in the forest. I found out about a missing homeless man and the dismembered corpses of the cops found in woods. Parts of corpses anyways. And I found out about something called the Akadexiki. A follow-up call to the dean from the nearby university got me that. And it got me meeting with the grandson of a shaman who asked the university to take the speakers down. I met with him the very next day. "I don't know how well I can explain it. I don't think it's the same way my grandfather does," Idas says. I follow up immediately, eager. "Try me." "You know how everything that's alive today has some sort of the same DNA? Like if you go back far enough, you will have a common ancestor. Even really different things like germs. Well, I don't think the Akadizeki are in the same family tree. I think they come from somewhere else." He sort of trails off, perhaps expecting skepticism from me. 2 days ago. That's what I've heard from my grandpa. Last week, maybe I wouldn't have believed this, but he doesn't know that I have a good reason not to be skeptic. These things aren't a joke, he tells me, fingers wrapped around a frappuccino. People at the college think my grandfather is crazy. They only listen to him because he's respected in the tribe. But even though they respect him, most of the tribe thinks he's crazy too. Do you think he's crazy? I asked him. About the Akataziki? He looked grave and sudden. No, I don't think my grandpa is crazy. Because I saw one. This was like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was maybe 13. I was out in the woods on my ATV, just weaving through trees and going too fast. I was a stupid kid then. I did a lot of stupid shit. Anyway, I'm in some pretty sparse woods, so it's easy to see far off, and I see the animal laying down in the distance. I turn my ATV to get closer. I can tell it's a deer. As I'm pulling up to it, I cut the engine and just roll to a stop about 20 feet from the thing. I think it must be hurt or something because its back legs aren't working and it's pulling itself along by its front legs. Thinking I'll need to kill it, I go to pull out my knife. As soon as I reach down, the thing's head just snaps towards me, and I don't mean it's heard a sound and sort of looked around, then saw me. It immediately jerked its head right towards me. It's, he clears his throat. It didn't look right. It was like someone tried to make a deer, but didn't have all the right parts. It was all twisted and gangly, with these nasty swollen eyes just staring at me. And I got this feeling like it was trying to figure me out, trying to figure out what I was. Completely still, I stood. And then a couple seconds later, it just turned and kept dragging itself away. Wow, I say, with real awe. I pushed my ATV as fast as I could back to the house. That's when my grandfather told me about the Akataziki. He said they were bad spirits that spawn deep in the forest. They attract to signs of life, noise, sight, stuff like that. When they find something alive of that sort, they copy it. But they kill it first. Once they've copied something, they try to find more about it and make a better copy. I don't really know why. This is just what he told me. Most of the time they're harmless. Every now and then, one shows up in the shape of a deer or a dog or something. Then the shaman go out and take care of it. Huh? So what do they do about the one you saw? They went out to find the deer, a real deer. When they caught one, they brought it to the Akataziki. The only way to kill them is to make them copy something already dying. We sat in silence there for a moment, drinks forgotten. I saw one. What? He says, surprised. And I think I know why your grandfather wanted the speakers taken down. What he was afraid of, it happened. Wait, slow down. What are you talking about? There's a human Akataziki out there. A few hours later, we're standing at the trailhead behind my property. It's turning into evening now, with only about an hour of real daylight left. There's a group of men nearby from Ida's tribe, shaman talking to each other in hushed voices. Behind them are a dozen or so women and children, and some of the women are crying. Ida, what's going on? I asked, in whispered tones, but he motions for me to wait as the circle of the shaman breaks up. An older man in his 60s, who I assume is Ida's grandfather, walks over to us at the entrance to the trail. He doesn't stop to talk to us, but just nods his head in our direction and continues past us down the trail. He has a weary sort of strength to him, despite his age, and the feathered garb and war paint on his body led him an air of danger. I could see that he would have been a great warrior back in the times of their ancestors. I see a stone dagger on his belt as he goes. Eventually I speak. When is he coming back? And Ida just gives me a flat, mournful look. He isn't coming back. And then Ida's words from before ring in my ear. The only way to kill them is to make them copy something already dying.